My dear sisters and brothers in Christ, Saint Mathew wrote his Gospel for the Jewish Christians, and in the Sermon on the Mount, we clearly see the connection between Moses and Jesus. Just as Moses went up to the mountain to pray and to receive the commandments from God, Jesus also is bringing his new commandment to the new Israel. Mountain is a place of solitude, and being away from the worldly distractions, one can converse with God. Also, people believed that since God's abode is above, going to the mountain allows one to be closer to God. Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' interpretation of the Torah and thus contains his ethical teaching. In Deuteronomy 18:15, Moses tells the people of Israel, "A prophet like me will the Lord your God raise up for you from among your own kinsmen. To him you shall listen." Matthew is trying to tell that Jesus is that new Moses whom everyone has to listen now. Moses is the lawgiver in the Old Testament. In St. John's Gospel, we read, "The laws was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ." If Moses is the giver of the law, and Jesus is the giver of grace and truth, even when the first set of tablets were destroyed because of the sin of the people, Moses' intercession helped them to receive it for a second time. When Moses mediated the old covenant, where God's grace and justice remained unresolved, Jesus mediates the new covenant, a response to which, through faith, brings grace and peace. Just as the old covenant is subordinate to the new, Moses is a type inferior to Jesus. Pope Benedict XVI has dedicated a chapter 4 of his book Jesus of Nazareth to explain the meaning of the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew is attempting to show Jesus as the new Moses who gives the new commandment from the Mount. The authority of Jesus to teach is a commandment when he says Jesus did not replace it with his Sermon on the Mount but fulfills or completes it. The beatitudes are full of paradoxes because God's values are different from worldly values. When man begins to see and live from God's perspective, when he is a companion of Jesus' way, then he lives by new standards, and something of the eschaton, of the reality to come, is already present, writes Pope Benedict. It is not a social program from Jesus for his followers, but an action from faith-generated strength of renunciation and responsibility for our neighbor and for the whole society. Jesus is the Messiah, expected to bring a renewed Torah that Paul might say the law of Christ. Galatians chapter 6 verse 2. The freedom coming from following the law of Christ in truth makes us slaves. In Jesus' case, it is not the universally binding adherence to the Torah that forms the new family. Rather, it is adherence to Jesus himself, to his Torah, writes Pope Benedict. Our Holy Father says that Israel exists to be a light of nations, and Jesus brings the God of Israel to all nations, so that all nations now pray to him and recognize Israel's scriptures as his word, the word of the living God. The gift of universality is the fruit of Jesus' work, and that is why Jesus is the new Messiah. Our response to this call is to be in communion with Jesus, followers of Jesus who have the character, traits of the beatitudes, and who live according to the sermons, are a powerful light and witness in today's world.